Hi everyone! Today we are doing a more serious video on the nuances and complexities around specifically Nikolas and her protests and movements against the music industry and Nickelodeon. And I want to say that this video does not serve as a be-all end-all start to finish of what has gone on with Nikolas and the foundation the movement referred to as Eat Predators. Trust me, people that are way better than me at this have done this already. The video will have minimal but some censoring just because I've worked really hard on this and I would like for monetization to still work, but if it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's not the end of the world. But I also don't want to be comically obtuse almost in like the way that I speak about it to avoid trying to come across or trying to preserve any AdSense that's present. Trigger warnings for child SA as well as child predators, complex discussions of mental health, and a discussion of the cycle of abuse and how allegations are discussed in the public eye. Before we get into everything as well, I do want to thank my patrons and members with their names on screen now. As well, I want to thank Noor for the excellent research document, and this one in particular was a doozy, as well as special guest for this video, Ofidoki, who is a much more well-rounded person when it comes specifically to Nikolas and understands these situations a lot better than I do, as again, I kind of observed this from the outside, only really coming into it to make this video. So there are 3 parts to the video as always. Part 1, who is Nikolas and why she's so controversial. Part 2, Nikolas and the context around her various scandals as well as done through a restorative justice framework. I will title this something more clever when I do the parts of the video. I'm sorry, I live near hospitals. Well, I just live in a big city. Anyway. And then third part is Rhetoric as well. I just realized I had not reworked the section of the script in the beginning. I have too much to do. My bad. Part 1, who is Nikolas? So I have personally been observing the emergence and seemingly public perception-based downfall of Eat Predators and Nikolas over the past year and a half or so. Mind you, I've been watching videos on this for a while. I have never really dug into it too much just because of mostly the delicate nature of the content that surrounds it. However, my lovely special guest today, Ofidoki, has done a lot of the groundwork when it comes to discussing Nikolas. Nikolas, most famously known for her child roles on Nickelodeon shows, as well as a couple of roles on Disney Channel and The Walking Dead, was most famous for her role in Zoe 101, working alongside Jamie Lynn Spears on the show. The releasing of Jamie Spears' book sort of opened the Pandora's box on Nikolas' time on Nickelodeon, as well as Alexa being inspired by Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, that discusses her issues along working at Nickelodeon, but mostly pertaining to the issues that she had with her mother and the idea of being famous as a child. However, during when Jamie Lynn had released her book, the Free Britney movement was in full force and was extremely prominent online, in which Britney Spears openly shown disdain towards Jamie Lynn Spears, thus kind of having Jamie Lynn Spears' credit questioned while her book had been coming out. This allowed for an environment I found for Nikolas to be openly very critical of Jamie Lynn Spears and to be able to be seen as a sort of perfect victim in the disagreements that she had with Jamie Lynn while filming Zoe 101. Now, I'm not necessarily commenting on whether or not any of that was truth or a lie. That's not really my circus or my monkeys, if you will. It's just, I'm just framing the sort of ability for the emergence to come through and the way that she was able to gain traction for her movement as far as its social media presence goes specifically. The issue comes in when Alexa began rolling out the Eat Predators project, podcast, YouTube channel thing, and I'm not personally an expert, so I've looped in someone much more qualified than me to finish this part. So let's get to Ofidoki and her conversation on this as well. I will link her channel down below, obviously.
Hi, I'm Ofi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things over on my channel Ofidoki. I have been making videos about Nikolas over on my channel for a lot of the last year. I started in the spring, around the time of the release of the Quiet on Set documentary, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in this video. At this point, I have several videos because I thought that I was going to cover the whole thing just in 1 or 2 goes, and then stuff kept happening. Like, one of my videos says my last video about Eat Predators, and then that did not end up being true because a lot less other people ended up talking about Eat Predators, and I ended up continuing my coverage of all of this. I was super stoked when Mika asked me to be part of this video because I love Mika's videos. I have put together something of a little presentation for us of a lot of the information that is in my long Eat Predators series and of some of the things that I know Mika was going to talk about today. So, my first point here, who is Alexa Nikolas? Alexa Nikolas is a former child actor and an activist. She was on the first 2 seasons of the Nickelodeon show Zoe 101 when she was a teenager, an experience that was clearly very negative for her. Alexa has spoken about being bullied and excluded on the set, and of both Dan Schneider and Britney Spears being verbally abusive to her during this time, which is part of why Alexa left the show following season 2. She acted in a handful of other projects after that, including a few brief roles on shows like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and then later The Walking Dead and Mad Men, but Alexa's acting credits on IMDb stop in about 2013. In the years since, she has worked on a few other projects before Eat Predators, including a short film, but I personally have been primarily focused on Eat Predators as I've looked into her because that's how she got onto my radar in the first place and the thing I think is most distressing that she's up to. And as far as Eat Predators goes, Eat Predators is described on their website, which opens directly to the merch store, as a powerful movement forged by the unwavering spirit of activist, actress, and sexual abuse survivor Alexa Nikolas. It also says on the About page that I had to toggle over to because the website opens directly to their merch store, beyond our merchandise, Eat Predators is a community, a sanctuary for survivors and allies alike. Here, stories are shared, hearts are mended, and hope is ignited. We understand the importance of standing together, united in our fight to dismantle the systems that perpetuate abuse. So beyond her experiences on the set of Zoe 101, Alexa Nikolas has also very publicly identified herself as a survivor of abuse, specifically of abuse from her former husband, Michael Milos, a musician also known as Rye. It was with this background of having been abused by someone in the music industry that Alexa Nikolas moved into the sort of activism that she's currently profiting off of. I think with noble intentions to begin with, when the protests were being organized by a group and Eat Predators was functioning as a collective. But I really can't still ascribe those motivations to Alexa Nikolas's current and recent actions. Several founding members who were there at the beginning have not only left the organization, but have since found themselves on the receiving end of live streams about their falling out with Alexa. These are all broadcast to her viewers and monetized. Film live with super chats coming in to interrupt her every so often. She calls this live stream series Guess Who, and she has used it to lie about several former members of Eat Predators, and she's included private and identifying information in these streams. And you would think that the exodus of original members might have impacted the momentum that Eat Predators was gaining, but all of these videos garnered far less views than the videos where Alexa was covering something that had, much to the displeasure of a lot of those early members of Eat Predators who had left, become more and more of a focus of the organization. It moved from a primarily protest-based organization to a live stream-based organization that Alexa Nikolas and her husband were running on her YouTube channel. Though the collective originally existed to protest abuse in the music industry and had many protests to that effect following the first protest at a Diplo concert, following the release of Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died in 2022, Alexa had a protest at Nickelodeon. She credits Jeanette a lot for her taking that route with her activism. She had spoken about her experience on Nickelodeon prior in Instagram live streams, before Eat Predators even began, so also long before this shift in the focus that Eat Predators had. But it was never a central focus of this organization until after Jeanette's book was so successful. Alexa has mentioned this. She says she was never offered a book deal and refuses kind of to discuss any of the parts that are not about the creator, which is how Jeanette referred to Dan in her book. Alexa created protest signs with Dan Schneider's face and the creator of childhood trauma to make that more explicit and also, to just get in on that action. The shift in focus to Nickelodeon trauma bait content was incredibly successful for Alexa, and she did several live streams about Nickelodeon, Dan Schneider, and the like, as well as about her beef with Christy Carlson Romano and the cast of the Ned's Declassified podcast, which I do have a couple of videos about if you're interested. But what I've largely been covering is that she also became involved with a very flawed docuseries by Investigation Discovery called Quiet on Set. Alexa was one of the first participants to even be involved with Quiet on Set, and she spoke later on, once the documentary was already out, about how her story and her interview, which was filmed years earlier than some of the interviews in the docuseries, was used to pitch the series to networks before it was eventually picked up for distribution. And at some point between Alexa's interview and the premiere of Quiet on Set, Drake Bell enters the picture. Drake Bell was one of the final participants added to Quiet on Set, and he was interviewed after the people working on the documentary had already unsealed support letters for Brian Peck, a dialogue coach and sexual abuser who worked on Nickelodeon. Brian Peck pled no contest to 11 counts of sexual misconduct with a minor in 2003, following which he was sentenced to 16 months in prison and a place on the offender registry. There was actually already a pretty solid amount of information in public record available that pointed to Drake Bell having been Brian Peck's victim even before these letters were unsealed. Not just internet rumors, but also, from the redacted court records, it was known, for example, that the minor in question had been on set of The Amanda Show, and Drake Bell had never confirmed this publicly or told his story until Quiet on Set, but there's a very limited amount of young male actors who had been on The Amanda Show. Still, though, everyone kind of politely agreed to pretend like nobody had any idea ahead of time. I'm sure some people genuinely didn't. But Drake Bell was billed as a surprise guest for Quiet on Set, and articles came out confirming that he was the victim of Brian Peck prior to his episodes of the docuseries coming out. In the docuseries, he told his story, and he was also provided with a very quick and efficient rug sweeping of his own charges of reckless endangerment of and the distributions of materials harmful to a minor, which he pled guilty in court to in Ohio in 2021. Now, Alexa Nikolas had already covered this plea hearing on her channel in 2022. She went back and reacted to a video of the sentencing, and she read an article about it, as well as reacting to paparazzi photographs of Drake Bell huffing from balloons with his child in the car. This is something that she made merch about because she was calling him an alleged dad as like a joke. She also talked about the time when he was a guest star on Zoe 101 and that she had found him arrogant at the time and not liked him. Drake Bell complained about this later in his private Discord server with fans, saying that Alexa was a total joke and that she claimed that every man she comes in contact with abuses her. Alexa would later remove the merch and private her video reacting to Drake Bell's sentencing, and she would also later go to one of his concerts. Alexa got a lot of criticism for removing this video, especially because she did it while she was deep into her pivot into Nickelodeon and Quiet on Set related content. So not only did she remove the video where she was supporting Drake Bell's victim, but she was also creating new content on a very frequent basis that had to do with Drake Bell and with his status as a victim of Brian Peck. Alexa was very distressed by the letters of support that had been unsealed for the documentary, and she did not feel as though people were responding appropriately to learning that Drake Bell was a victim, something she seems to think should have erased any consequences for other behaviors he's exhibited in recent years. Alexa made videos calling out the people who wrote letters in support of Brian Peck, which on its own might be noble, but she was also making videos where she was attacking Josh Peck. No relation, just the same last name. This is the Josh who was in Drake and Josh with Drake Bell. She was attacking Josh Peck for not being friends with Drake Bell anymore and for not inviting him to his wedding. Alexa, at some point deep into this defensiveness of Drake Bell, dug her heels in on Twitter in response to people criticizing her for taking down the video she had once made in defense of his anonymous victim. Alexa claimed that she would make a new video and that she was now in possession of every document pertaining to the 2021 case. This caused quite a stir among the people who were already critical of her. The 2021 Drake Bell case was sealed for the minor's protection, and the only version of it that was available when requested from the Ohio courts was a very brief document and not the hundreds of pages that Alexa was claiming on Twitter to have. Another major player to introduce here, Kat Tenbarge, a feminist journalist for NBC, had been working on coverage of Drake Bell from immediately following the buzz around Quiet on Set in the spring. She jumped in to talk about the harassment that many of his accusers were suddenly facing, because the young woman from the Ohio case is not the only victim of Drake Bell. There have been allegations made against him in great detail by multiple ex-girlfriends, some of whom were minors when he began to date them. Kat also began looking into Nikolas and the way that her coverage of Drake Bell had changed following Quiet on Set's release. She sent Alexa an email to ask some questions for a piece that she was writing. And this email really triggered Alexa. Alexa, over the course of a few months, threatened retaliation against Kat in a very similar way to how she had retaliated against former members of Eat Predators, down to making a thumbnail for a Guess Who livestream that never happened. The livestream she did eventually have about Kat Tenbarge was in September, and in it she read the entire email from Kat, which was deeply normal and provided a lot of questions, both about her relationship with Drake Bell and how she was claiming to have possession of documents that were meant to be sealed, and about the way Eat Predators was run as an organization, including claims made by former members about things like payment. Alexa took a break without notifying her Patreon supporters and while continuing to benefit from their memberships. She was only really mostly active on Instagram for a few months leading up to that September live stream, but she returned to Twitter and posted a picture of Kat Tenbarge saying that Kat was one of the reasons why Alexa had taken that break. Adam McIntyre retweeted it, saying ratio, and successfully ratioing Alexa, which upset her, and there was a bit more back and forth on Twitter at that point. Adam made a video addressing all of this. He had already made one video previously back in April criticizing her for her support of Drake Bell, but she was made very upset by this new video that Adam made, and she ended up going live that night to address it. And throughout that live stream, Alexa kept threatening to leak the drive. The drive in question being what she had sent to Kat Tenbarge, who said on Twitter during Alexa's most recent round of threats to a live stream about her that Alexa had sent her unredacted documents that didn't appear to be from the courts and weren't available in what was able to be requested from the courts. Alexa was insisting she would leak this entire drive that she sent to Kat, which, as of early November, has still not happened. Instead, Alexa returned to Twitter a few days later, and she published the link to a Freedom of Information Act request for the police report that led to the case against Drake Bell, which I guess technically was publicly available, but it was not the kind of thing that comes up in a Google search or that anybody else who had requested documents from the court had received. In fact, nothing in these documents from the Cleveland County Police Department, which are sloppily redacted in some places, containing the victim's address and full name and the names of some of her friends, does anything to exonerate Drake Bell. And Alexa has remained incredibly evasive about what it is that she saw on these documents that made her change her mind and stand so firmly with Drake Bell suddenly, going as far as to even worm out of referring to his victim as a survivor, and going as far as using reported survivors when she talks about his victims now that they seem to be friends, when she definitely would have just said survivors earlier. And they do seem to be friends. That's something that Alexa did not even attempt to answer to in that live stream where her fans and critics alike were questioning her attendance of a Drake Bell concert this summer. She also did not respond to the rumor about her legal representation being Andrew Bretler, a lawyer who represents people like Armie Hammer, Colleen Ballinger, and more. She did as good as confirm it later on Twitter, I think. The same day as she leaked the drives, she accused Kat of leaking confidential communications, so I think I take that as a yes. Alexa has been largely silent following this most recent live stream and the subsequent posting of the police report, though she still has been posting somewhat regularly on her Instagram stories, and she was honored at a Ford Foundation event, where, interestingly enough, she was introduced as an advocate against the grooming of girls, but there was no mention of Eat Predators at all. The Patreon continues to take members' money, though it's been months since the rewards were actually being given out. And when I tell you that I just talked for like 20 minutes and I got into maybe half of the things that are like truly interesting to dissect when it comes to Alexa Nikolas and her mishandling of her platform, her advocacy, her activism, I don't know, there's a reason that I keep coming back to this. It's just really fascinating to me. And it's really fascinating to me both because there is kind of this never-ending list of notable beefs that Alexa Nikolas has had with other people, but also because it is just such a fundamental mishandling of a platform that really could have done a lot of good. There are a lot of other specifics that I could get into, specifics that I know Mika is getting into in this video, specifics I've already gotten into on my other channel or plan to get into in the future. But thank you very much to Mika for letting me be part of this video. This is my first ever collab. If you're interested in watching any of the videos I've made on the subject, again, I'm Ofidoki here on YouTube. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Miss Ofi. That was great, and I really appreciate the ability to have condensed something so nuanced and complicated to the length that you did. Because I don't think I could do it. This script is 14 pages. We are in for a ride. This is my example of not being able to do that. But let's get into part 2, Alexa's scandals in the context of restorative justice frameworks. Again, I will rework the naming of this when I actually edit the video. I don't know why I kept the naming in the way that I did on my script. But anyway, I am now going to add so many disclaimers to the approach that I'm personally taking for the rest of the video, okay? I, for one, do not think, nor by any stretch of the imagination, I'm literally reading this directly because I don't want to screw it up, am I comparing Alexa Nikolas to the likes of people like Drake Bell and Dan Schneider and Bryan Singer and all of these other people, okay? I'm not. Do not even try to claim that. I swear to God, if you're an Alexa supporter too, even, or whatever, or Alexa herself, do not even try that with me. I will laugh. The main goal of this video and my analysis in general is to review the public's change in perceptions towards Alexa as the mission and trajectory of Eat Predators developed as Alexa had different fallouts online. When I've seen these sorts of conversations, some people kind of just assume that when I make these types of videos that the formations are directly and 100% based on my personal opinions. For this video specifically, I want to say that my opinion, while is interlaced throughout, as per any commentary or video essay, no matter how neutral they want to be, and even academic works, this is something discussed in Rhetoric as well, that there's no such thing as a neutral text in any context. I am pairing my opinion with the analysis of the shift in public perception through comments, Twitter interactions, like-to-dislike ratios in videos, as well as commentary videos surrounding Alexa Nikolas. And all of this is laid out in the research doc. I watched another extra video from Ryan Beard that I'll link separately myself as well. I've also watched all of Ofidoki's videos on this. When I go through topics like this, I tend to go through this book. I tend to go through this book, The Big Book of Restorative Justice, which contains 4 separate books. The Little Book of Restorative Justice, the Little Book of Circle Processes, the Little Book of Family Group Conferences, and the Little Book of Victim Offender Conferencing. So I was going to pull from each of these 4 books. However, the Little Book of Circle Processes and the Little Book of Family Group Conferencing are very specific guidelines on how to apply the frameworks as if you're the one running the meetings, while restorative justice and victim offender conferencing have more of those kind of topics and overviews. So I'm going to take from those 2, and then for the other 2, I'm going to take from the Little Book of Conflict Transformation. So both in the same vein and both from the same publishing book, the Little Books of Justice and Peace Building, or the Justice and Peace Building series is indicated in this bigger book. But that's the basis I'm going for as far as reviewing Alexa's kind of more controversial episodes, for lack of a better term, as well as I do a very general rhetoric analysis at the end, just kind of honing in on specific things that I noticed that led to this, what I can kind of perceive as a downfall of Alexa Nikolas. As a means of leading the Eat Predators movement, I'm not saying she's necessarily done as an individual too. I don't think it's that dark. It needs to be that serious. I want to add that I don't necessarily think restorative justice 100% as a concept, in which I mean specifically in its most simple definition of working with a perpetrator to heal or attempt to heal a trauma. I don't think, for example, that Alexa is interested or needs to work with her abuser, Mike Milosh. There is just not an appropriate time for that, and I'm not saying that that is something that needs to be done. I'm not dictating anything. I'm not telling anyone what to do. It is just in the fact that these have a lot of concepts on how trauma can build up, how trauma can be inflicted upon others by people who are victimized, and a lot of other really important subjects that I find at times Alexa sort of talks out of her keister with, and I want to have a more direct comparison for that. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm picking 4 particularly controversial situations and aligning them with aspects from the books, pairing the actions that were deemed unfavorable to the academic aspect as a result of that. The 4 situations I'm going to discuss today, which Ophi did touch on a lot of these as well, I am going to double dip because it's my channel. So these are the 4. One, we're going to start with Alexa Nikolas and versus Chrissy Carlson Romano, because that's sort of the lightest and started the longest time ago. I think I try to put these in order, but the problem is that they sort of compounded all around the same time. So even if, let's say, the Chrissy Carlson Romano thing was the earliest, it came to its peak, the one of the latest. So it was just kind of hard to do. Even Nor has them in a different order as well in the doc, so I just try my best. The second one, we're going to talk about Drake Bell sentencing and Alexa deleting the videos. The third part we're going to talk about is Alexa versus Kat Tenbarge versus Adam McIntyre, seemingly versus everybody. And just for the general kind of downfall of the Eat Predators movement, which I have a lot of disclaimers for when I get to that part as well, but I'm also going to say here, I touch on that very lightly because we're getting a little bit too into people who are also very bad and or seem to be bad. I'm not really sure. And when things get too messy, and I think that me platforming a lot of these things can unearth further traumas, I tend to try to avoid it. So just putting that out there now, you can get out of this video now if you were just expecting me to be hammering into Alexa Nikolas and how much I hate her for an hour or whatever, however long this is. That's not what I'm interested in. So now when we get into the Chrissy Carlson Romano situation, we begin to really see a pattern of what I can best describe as good cause, wrong person when it comes to Alexa Nikolas. And I'll elaborate more on this in the rhetoric section specifically. But to shorten, Alexa will align and shift to anyone. I'm sorry about the sirens. Alexa will align and shift publicly to anyone who agrees with her openly. But then if they disagree with her or change opinions, I've noticed, will tend to hyperbolically align people with her abusers. Chrissy Carlson Romano is someone who was also a child actress, as opposed to Alexa working on Nickelodeon. Chrissy worked on the Disney Channel. In more recent years, Chrissy has been the host of a podcast called Vulnerable, which the title is very self-explanatory of the goal of the podcast, and it's a podcast just based on the person being interviewed being forward in the conversation. Podcast episode where Chrissy interviews Alexa was aired on November 1st, 2022, and things had been heating up for essentially like a year after that, especially once Chrissy Carlson Romano had a conversation with someone named Corey Feldman, who has a lot of allegations against him for being predatory. Alexa escalates this by tweeting at Chrissy Carlson Romano about Corey Feldman. The tweet shows many allegations of women coming out against Corey, along with Corey interacting with underage people on Twitter and other social media. Alexa also claims that Christy was contacted about this, but left her on red when Alexa reached out to her. Alexa first released her feelings in a stream a year later on November 17th, 2023, talking about the Ned's Declassified podcast, and claims that the people in that podcast were trying to defame her. Alexa escalates further with another episode called Chrissy Carlson Romano Deleted My Vulnerability after the episode was deleted, after Alexa came for her about Corey Feldman. This episode came out on November 20th, 2023, and as in Alexa's episode, or as in Alexa's stream, I guess is what I should have worded that a bit differently, which was essentially Alexa openly calling Chrissy Carlson Romano an enabler to predators, stating that she violated Alexa's trust and took her for granted and platformed her trauma for money. Alexa goes on to say that Chrissy Carlson only does sugar-coated pieces of information and did give her credit for letting her on in the first place. However, Alexa said that she got a call from, got contacted by a friend of a survivor of Corey Feldman and felt the need to reach out to Christy, and then when there was no avail, began to publicly call her out. And in the response to the public call out, that's when Chrissy Carlson Romano deleted the podcast episodes. Alexa also goes into other conversations that Christy had in regard to Hugh Hefner, saying that she was essentially aligning with him on a lot of the transgressions that he was doing. There ends up being an all-out war that happens with Lindsay Shaw, who played Mo on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, primarily coming from a clip where Alexa was called off-putting and crazy. Now, this is one of those another one of those times where I'm like, everyone can be bad, because kind of just like trying to like live forever off nostalgia and then causing fights between people and just talking about like that about any adults really is very childish and silly. And the whole podcast as a whole was like so strange. If y'all want a video on the Ned's Declassified podcast or something about like the nostalgia podcast trend, like let me know and I'm willing to look into that as well.
More of this, where survivors don't have to wait for a journalist to write their story, where they don't have to wait for a justice system to say what the damages were, or a criminal system to say this person's guilty. You know, I want to inspire survivors to create spaces where we can safely share with the world what we've learned and how we can inspire and, you know, maybe influence other people to do the right thing moving forward and to not be an enabler or not to be a blind enabler, right? So to speak. And so one of the saddest elements out of coming forward about your trauma on someone else's platform or to a journalist or to a website was everyone else kind of seemed to prosper from me coming forward about my trauma. A lot of people got a lot of clicks, which equaled a lot of money. A lot of websites got a lot of ad revenue, which equaled a lot of money. Or their podcast that I was on ended up in the media circuit, and they got PR from my trauma. And think about that for a second. That trauma can be trending. But what happens when trauma isn't trending? Right? There's a lot of people out there that are watching right now that don't have trauma that is trending. You know, their trauma doesn't get to be heard. And a lot of survivors get their trauma buried and everyone forgets about it, but not the survivor. And for me, I had a rare privileged situation where my trauma became trending. And what happened out of that was a lot of people making money off of my trauma. A lot of people. And I was so focused on just wanting to tell my story and get it out of me, and hoping that if media did take it or a podcast did host me on it, that I could inform people and educate people and make a better future for my daughter. And I was so focused on that I forgot about me. Like, totally forgot about me. I got totally depleted emotionally. I was so triggered regularly because I was having to be re-traumatized and, you know, tell my story to random strangers. I don't even remember their names anymore. I'd be like Amy, Lisa, and I'd be on the phone. Sorry. I'd be on the phone downstairs for hours talking to this journalist, that journalist, this journalist, and reliving a lot of my trauma. And I would hear my daughter upstairs playing, and I wanted to play with her. I didn't want to be downstairs. I didn't want to be downstairs reliving my trauma. I didn't want to be down there. But I knew that if I was down there, that maybe there was a chance she didn't have to go through half of the horrible shit I had to go through in my life that no one spoke out about. And so to counteract how I was feeling, I would say this could have a positive, this can change Nova's future, and it matters, so keep up the good work, or like keep up the fight. And at the end of the day, though, I was depleted. I was protesting every Thursday. I was talking to journalists and lawyers all day, every day, and I completely forgot about myself. Sorry, guys. I apologize that I'm getting so emotional about this. Gabriella, welcome, Gabriella, to the dinner party. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. So, you know, none of it was on my platform. I gave my trauma away to everyone. everyone, random people. I didn't even know who I was talking to some days. It was like 4 different people, and I'm just trauma dumping. I'm pouring out everything, just trying to get these articles out so that in the mainstream we can start having this conversation about predatory behavior in the entertainment industry. It meant so much to me, so I just kept doing it, and I burnt out. I totally burnt out. I didn't even have the resources to continue. I didn't have the emotional resources. I didn't have the financial resources. I was putting all my money into the protest and organizing it, and I got depleted. I got totally depleted. I even had to go into intensive therapy.
The way that Alexa was talking about Christy Carlson Romano specifically felt like a personal frustration and personal vendettas being leveraged into Alexa claiming that they platform and support all of these people. This one was a somewhat more succinct example. I think Alexa saying like she deleted my vulnerability and was trying to silence me, the way that she kind of does the direction, it's really simple internet politics of if someone goes about how much they hate you and kind of makes it sound like they regret being on their show. I kind of think that it was just sort of Christy being like, I want to get rid of this because I feel bad now. But obviously I'm not in her intention. But with this, that's the end of that part. And I'm going to pull from the first of the books, the little book of Restorative Justice by Howard Zehr. We're going to start with just like the basics of how people need to move together to heal. And the way that offenders are typically supposed to work with the survivors. And this is just kind of in general because Alexa likes to point fingers and say that everyone causes harm towards her, but never really brings forth any resolutions, which kind of feeds into the public perception of that a lot of the Eat Predators movement was done to, or the Eat Predators being combined with Alexa's social media presence specifically, not the movement as it exists independently. And I think that nuance needs to be addressed. Just kind of doesn't really present a lot of safe spaces for survivors. There's a lot of complaints as well. So I just want to bring in a little bit of context on like healing and the kind of togetherness that seems to have been missing from the movement in general. A second major area of concern that gave rise to restorative justice is ensuring the accountability for those who have caused harm. The criminal justice system is concerned about holding offenders accountable, but accountability in that system means making sure that those who cause harm get the punishment they deserve. Little in process encourages them to understand the consequences of their actions or to empathize with those that they have harmed. On the contrary, the adversarial game requires them to look out for themselves. Those who have offended are discouraged from acknowledging their responsibility and are given little opportunity to act on this responsibility in concrete ways. Instead, the risk is of lengthy prison sentences acts as a disincentive to truth-telling. The neutralization strategies, the stereotypes, and rationalizations that those who offend often use to distance themselves from the people they hurt are never challenged. Unfortunately, then, their sense of alienation from society is only heightened by the legal process and by the prison experience. Indeed, they often feel like victims of the system and society, for a variety of reasons. Then, the legal process tends to discourage responsibility and empathy on the part of those who have offended. Restorative justice has brought the awareness of the limits and negative byproducts of punishment. Beyond that, however, it has argued that punishment is not real accountability. Real accountability involves facing up to what one has done. It means encouraging those who have caused harm to understand the impact of their behavior, the harms they have done, and arguing to take steps to put things as right as possible. This accountability, it is argued, is better for those who have been victimized, better for those who have caused harm, and better for society as well. Those who have caused harm have other needs beyond their responsibility to victims and communities. If we expect them to assume their responsibility to change their behavior and to become contributing members of our communities, their needs, says restorative justice, must be addressed as well. That subject is beyond the scope of the little book, but the following suggests some ideas of what is needed. Accountability. Accountability that addresses the resulting harms, encourages empathy and responsibility, and transforms shame. Encouragement to experience personal transformations, including healing from the harms that contributed to their offending behavior, including personal and historical traumas, opportunities for treatment for addictions and other problems, enhanced personal competencies, encouragement for support and integration into the community, and for a smaller number, at least some sort of temporary restraint. So this is just kind of what I find that Alexa, when she will have these disagreements with people, will just kind of be throwing a lot of stones will be demanding accountability, will be demanding a lot from people, and then if it is not addressed in the specific way that she wants, will completely shut them out. And then if it is not addressed perfectly to what they want, or what she's kind of feeling at this given time, and this comes through a lot more when we talk about Adam McIntyre and Kat Tenbarge, she tends to say things like, you're aligning with my abuse, you're platforming my abuse, you're the same as them, which when you're comparing people in unrealistic situations, when you're uplifting abuse because you disagree with her, Adam McIntyre, for example, being like, this video was bad, is not Adam McIntyre saying that Dan Schneider is good. You see what I'm saying? So this is something that I wanted to talk about, is that while the offenders have their own needs, because this kind of transitions us into the Drake Bell section, there is a very high stakes responsibility in order to have those needs addressed in the first place, and the victim is still at the forefront of the conversation. Because now if we transition into the Drake Bell sentencing and the leaked documents, there needs to be a little bit more context. Mind you, Ophi did give a good synopsis, but I'm going to add a bit more as well. The resurgence of Drake Bell came from, or the re-resurgence of Drake Bell in the public eye comes from the Quiet on Set documentary, which went through the transgressions done to child actors on the set of various Nickelodeon shows, namely those that Dan Schneider has worked on. Drake Bell was a star on the Nickelodeon show Drake and Josh, however, not unlike many other child stars, had difficulty transitioning into the adult acting and music roles. The Quiet on Set documentary added Drake Bell later on and includes his statements on the abuse that he faced at the hands of his dialogue coach. However, Drake Bell himself later in his life also acted inappropriately towards minors to the extent in which in 2021 he pled guilty to the charges of attempted child endangerment and disseminating harmful material to juveniles. Both of these, to my understanding, were misdemeanors, which makes Drake Bell not technically a registered SO. The victim stated, or in her own proceedings, that she was first in contact with Drake Bell at the age of 12, in which they remained in contact on and off throughout that time. When she was 15, he messaged her on Instagram and initiated a sexual conversation. There were naked photos exchanged and then later met in person. This is also alleged. This is very alleged, this part, as well as, I guess, technically the photos, but it's complicated because of the charges that he did plead guilty to. It is alleged that Drake Bell this girl twice backstage of one of his shows. Drake denies the sexual. According to Drake's attorney, there was no proof that naked photos specifically were exchanged despite the guilty plea. Drake's own attorney did admit that Drake did say hurry up to the girl for her to turn 18. Ryan Beard goes through the allegations in a much more detailed sense, also discusses other suspicious interactions that Drake Bell has had with minors. I will link that video down below, separate from the document because it's not in the document. So what does this have to do with Alexa? So Alexa streamed discussing Drake Bell and her experiences with him, along with the comments made in the Quiet on Set documentary. However, this video is deleted, but I got my grubby little hands on it because the internet is forever. Alexa on the stream goes through articles where that state kind of like the charges as well as what he ended up pleading guilty to, and watched and reacted to the victim's statement. She goes as far as to dig into things like Drake's demeanor and body language throughout the victim's statement as well. And Alexa becomes deeply disturbed at the allegations of Drake sending his genitals, to which she says, eat predators, and presses like this soundbite thing and cries just hearing the allegations. I'm going to include a clip because I just want you to see like the level of disgust that Alexa has towards Drake at this time, because this also contextualizes the public interaction that happens after this. If there is a part about the victim, I'm censoring it. Even though Alexa didn't, I just feel like this person should not be as involved in any of this as she ended up being.
Thanks, Shay. Sorry, Shay. This happens a lot. This happens by a lot of individuals in the spotlight. They use their fandom to exploit them, to prey on them. And it's like Drake Bell is having a hard time apparently understanding his intentions. You know, in my opinion, since you pleaded guilty and you know that your conduct was wrong, this was preying on a child. In my opinion, you were preying on a fan, man. How despicable. This person looks up to you and is a child. And you preyed on this person, allegedly. Preyed on this person, exploited their trust, and while she's talking, you're literally laughing and smirking at her. Shame on you, dude. Shame on you, bro. You alleged dad. I heard, didn't like Sloan get like an email from him or his wife or something? Sure, Drake, send me an email. Ugh. Your situation, who are you? I can't even get started. Okay, let's just continue here because I need to stop.
Very, very seriously.
I take it very, very seriously, but I'm smirking at her. You know what? You take what sorry. You take what seriously, man? You're smirking at your victim's face, telling her trauma. You're smirking at it. And then you have the nerve to say you take this very, very seriously. By the way, that's what your lawyers probably told you to say. And that's what corporations say all the time. We take this very, very seriously, and we obviously don't approve of this behavior. That's what all of these enablers and alleged predators say. That's all they say. We take this very, very seriously. Drake Bell, if you took it very, very seriously, then you would not be smirking at the child, your victim, allegedly. A child who is literally telling somebody about her trauma as a child. Like, what kind of disrespect is that, to smirk at a child that's telling her trauma and then you plead guilty and admit that your conduct was wrong? Say that you're taking it very seriously and yet smile and smirk? Supersonic Warrior 93. People like him make me wish. What's Thanos? Wait, you have to tell me what that is. I'm like, tell me what this is. This is ridiculous, but I'm so tired of these alleged predators. And he, I guess, pleaded guilty. Jeez. Is he alleged? What do you want me to call you, Drake? Guilty Drake. Guilty Drake Bell. Self-profound guilty Drake Bell. I'm so over them saying they take this seriously and they're sorry and X, Y, and Z, but then you get to watch how they act to the victim. You saw how he looked at that victim when she was telling her trauma. You saw it, right? Is he taking it seriously? Wait till we watch the video that I had to watch on Sunday where he explains why he pleaded guilty. This guy is f***ing insane, in my opinion. Okay. I'm gonna continue right now.
And again, I just want to apologize to her and
Apologize, dude. You were just smirking at her and basically humiliating her when she was telling her trauma.
anyone else who may have been affected by my actions.
Here's the victim. Oh my God.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Very good. Well, the court heard a lot of.
Look at her face. Look at that child's face. Look at that person's face. She's crying. She's crying. And he was laughing and smirking at her. And in my opinion, pretending to apologize. In my opinion, I did not personally believe that Drake Bell was genuinely sorry. I don't think you can be genuinely sorry and smirk at your victim when she tells her story. I don't believe you that you're sorry. I don't, because your actions speak louder than words, Drake. Your actions speak louder than words, man. And that's just my personal truth there as a survivor. To see you smirking at her, man, like, shame on you, bro. As a mom also, shame on you, bro. And then you have the nerve in front of the judge. Me. I am so sorry. My intentions, blah, 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 blah. That's all for the judge, bro. That's not to her. That's not towards the victim. That's towards the judge, right?
Alexa reads a comment that says, which is very interesting when we get back to the further context of this, she has lifelong trauma and he has probation. Also, Alexa goes on and on, calling Drake an alleged dad as well, and saying that she wants nothing to do with him. Alexa ends up later extending a surprising amount of grace to Drake, kind of seemingly out of nowhere. Alexa goes on and on in so many videos by saying that she is consistent and a strong character and honest, and that she is here for survivors and survivors only. But what happens after this makes myself and many others feel otherwise. On March 23rd, 2024, Alexa tweets about the situation as viewers noticed that she privated the stream where she was being critical of Drake Bell. Many of the replies sensed a hesitance and change of heart. The tweet reads, "For those asking about my private videos, I now have every single report and all documents pertaining to the case. I'll be going over each piece over the next few weeks, and then I'm going to revisit it via streaming. I'm choosing to read diligently before I break it all down. There are hundreds of documents from the Cleveland Police Court, not from a person. There are witness transcriptions and submitted evidence, etc. I need time to read through it, obviously, and I support all survivors." And then this. Alexis strangely comes out being critical of Josh Peck after he said that he does not like Drake and that they were never really close. Ophie also brings up in one of her videos that Drake's story was a pinnacle point in marketing the Quiet on Set documentary, citing that it actually did result in a campaign of rewriting history towards Drake's own transgressions as people contextualize him as a victim himself. I also saw this happen in real time on platforms like Twitter. Alexa uploads a video about what has been going on with Drake, where she opens up pretty much just bitching about how much she hates Twitter. Alexa claims she was reading an article with false information that Drake was a registered SO. However, this is super dishonestly framed, in my opinion, because the majority of the stream had nothing to do with that, and specifically that article, but was actually Alexa reacting directly to the court statements and proceedings. And then Alexa just states that she owes no one anything. She doesn't owe anyone anything because she's a survivor. She turns the backlash into what I felt like was a guilt trip for receiving criticism, and Alexa focuses the framing entirely to herself, positioning herself in what could definitely be perceived as what I've noticed even just by reading the comments and things like that on Twitter and all these streams and stuff, as a borderline pro-Drake framing. Two things can exist at once, and I feel like this is something that we're always missing. People can feel like you're not being honest, and that's not necessarily them demanding something from you. And at the same time, when you have a platform that makes money specifically based on being there for survivors, to suddenly just nuke the content and then be like, I don't owe anyone anything, it just can kind of really feel like a spit in the face, especially when a lot of people who support Alexa watched history be rewritten about Drake in real time. Then there was photos of Alexa attending a Drake Bell concert, which have still not really been addressed, and was backstage with him. If you want nothing to do with this person and he makes you sick and you never want to see him again, those things are sort of not lining up. I have a dedicated section to this, as well as the backlash that comes from after this, but we need to get into a framework first. So now we're going to go into the second book, which is The Little Book of Victim Offender Counseling by Lorraine Stutzman Amstoltz. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm so sorry. So this section outlines the victim to offender dialogue, as well as just kind of just a general sense of like statistic evidence about how people react in these situations. The experience of victimization is often devastating and affects people in profound, life-altering ways. Whether the crime is minor or serious, the effects can be traumatic. Victims experience a range of emotions that include intense fear, helplessness, and anger at themselves and others, including family, friends, and the legal system. Some victims may experience a crisis of faith as they reassess their belief in a protective God. Many ask whether the harm was their own fault and struggle with a loss of control over their own lives, which leads to isolation from others. These responses to crime create needs that need to be met in a variety of ways. Sometimes victims' immediate and broader communities can provide a sense of safety and justice, but some needs can only be met by the person who caused the harm. Researchers at the Center for Restorative Justice and Peacemaking at the University of Minnesota reviewed 85 studies to examine participants' motives for entering into restorative justice dialogues. The studies included participants of victim offender mediation, group conferences, circles, and many other community-based processes. Various motives for victim participation included a desire to receive restitution, whether financial or otherwise, wanting to hold the offender accountable, and learning more about the why of the crime. Victims also express a need to share their pain with the offenders, as well as receive assurances that they would not commit a repeat offense. Perhaps most importantly, victims need to believe that they were involved in an experience that helped them regain power and respect following their victimization. Significantly, the report found that while restitution was the primary motivator for participating in victim offender mediation, what victims most valued was the opportunity to talk with the offender. So this is what I'm saying, and kind of leaning into both sides of this conversation, because obviously this segment or sentiment, and just in general from this chapter as well, had a very strong emphasis on wanting to talk to the offender, which, if we're being as charitable as humanly possible to Alexa, could be why she was acting in the way that she was. But when we go into the other aspects, such as the accountability and the care from the community, you, and by you, I guess Alexa and Nikolas in this case, seem to be turning your head away from your own community that felt like you were then platforming the very people they fear most, which are the people who are victimizing others, especially in a context of a person of higher power, financial affluence, and celebrity status towards somebody else. And Alexa really feels like she's moving the goalpost on what a victim can or can't do, or what she is responsible, not responsible for, and kind of ends up centering herself in this entire Drake Bell court proceeding, rewriting of history thing happening with the Quiet on Set documentary. Taking the role as a mediator, almost a leader of victims, particularly within the Nickelodeon sort of child actor universe, she never brings in any further context outside of herself, it seems. And again, I understand that she says she doesn't owe anybody anything, and I don't necessarily think that she does. But just because you don't feel like you owe anyone anything doesn't separate the fact that people can feel like the hypocrisy is hurtful, and doesn't mean that you are able to dictate the reality in which other people perceive you and your actions. And I think that that's the biggest piece that's missing here. Victim relationships and process and healing never seems to be the focus. The focus is don't criticize me, which is a selfish desire. Why is it silencing victims as a concept always seems to be tied to that she's being criticized, and often to things that are not related necessarily to silencing people, such as you removed the statement from Drake's victim and later, spoiler alert, post the police report and the court filings and all that kind of stuff on your public platform as a celebrity, essentially thus in turn leveraging your celebrity status by exposing this girl that had nothing to do with any of this, as far as this Eat Predators movement, as far as the Cat 10 barge stuff, anything like that. Isn't a direct role in any of this. It spirals way further from here. So given the difference in the nature of this conflict as well as the resulting escalation, I separated this part. So I'm discussing the separate situation, even though it's still linked for sure, being specifically the interactions between Alexa and Nikolas, Cat 10 Barge, who's a reporter for NBC News, who reports on internet and pop culture, who was famously on reporting for Business Insider before, and I believe contributed to one of the bigger articles on Jeffree Star as well, and drama channel Adam McIntyre. I want to mention here that Adam and Kat are also close friends, because this gives further context into the situation as well. On April 17th, 2024, Adam McIntyre releases a video called Let's Talk About Alexa Nikolas. And I'm going to summarize the video right now. So Adam opens by being very gracious toward Alexa, stating that she backed him up a lot during the situation last summer with Colleen Ballinger. Adam says that he thinks Drake Bell is an abuser and mentions that Quiet on Set was coming out. And as it kind of rolled out, Alexa deleted her videos on Drake. Adam reads tweets of people being upset with Alexa promoting the Nickelodeon merch while people were upset at her about the deleted video. Comments in the live stream chat felt that this was dishonest and that their opinions were changing towards Alexa. Adam ends with saying that he feels that Alexa is not addressing Drake Bell and that it was a very weird video to just kind of come in and be like, I don't owe anyone anything.
I found it really weird to see that inside of the article. If we are pro not harassing survivors, that means don't harass survivors.
Wait, is she going to say anything about the article? And about Drake Bell or no?
Simple. Don't do it. Don't harass them. There are predators out there that need to be eaten. Wasting it on...
Yeah, Drake Bell! Wait, you were so close, babe. You were so close. Wait, is she gonna say anything else about the article?
Survivorhood is so strange. If that much energy that people put into tearing each other down...
Is she not gonna say anything about the article?
Eating predators and actually doing some justice in this world, we'd change the world. But instead, we're down here at the bottom eating each other. And predators love that, by the way, because they don't get eaten. They just watch all of us down there eat each other.
Wouldn't that also feed into Drake Bell loving that you're taking attention away from the article and like making it about like other people fighting rather than what Drake Bell has actually done?
Like that does anything at all. And none of these people, I don't think I've met this person on from Twitter, show up to a protest in the rain. Get active. Stop eating each other. It's so old. And it's what predators love, by the way. They love it. Let's knock it off. That breaks the cycle. Breaking the cycle starts with us.
Wait, is she not going to say anything about the article?
Recycle. ABUSE. Wild out there. Like wild. And I'm done. I'm done with that. I know who I am. Really know who I am. I got nothing to hide. Okay. Other people do, and I can tell, and it shows. But I do not. I got nothing to hide. So I have, what did I say earlier? I'll tell you what freedom is. No fear. And I want more survivors out there to feel that. Because people are always going to try and tear down survivors. It's the wrong thing to do. Especially if you say you support survivors, that's the wrong thing to do. Which, by the way, it's so funny when people are like on Twitter, they're like, Alexa, like because she took down the Drake Bell video, like that means she's, dude, I don't have Drake Bell on my show here. I'm not platforming him, and I'm not like trying to like, I would have an actual conversation, first of all, if I were even ever to do that, right? But that's not even happening. Christy Carlson Romano, don't even compare me to her, because it didn't even work. She had this person on her show and didn't care to ask him the right questions.
This is really weird. I don't know. This is, oh God, I don't, this is oh my God. I'm actually at a loss for words. This is a really, I don't really know what to say. This is a really weird video. I can understand making a video out of frustration, but this is, it's like, she said at the start of the video, I'm not going to talk about Drake Bell because I'm being harassed, which is fine. Not really, but whatever. But she keeps bringing up different things about Drake Bell, but like deflecting them or like relating them back to like her, which again is fine. It's her own personal experience. But then in the process, completely, it's addressing Drake Bell without addressing it. And it just is kind of like, I don't know. I really don't know. We have another, like, 2 minutes.
Was bias and then left the survivors on red after he was on her show. Jesus, these trolls. Get your facts straight. So that felt good. That felt really good to just say that. It felt really good. And thank you, whoever's here listening. I don't even know who's here listening, but it felt really good to be able to just say that. I'm not afraid of the trolls. And there's haters watching right now. What? No fear. No fear. And that feels really good to say. And if anyone wants to judge me, go right ahead. But please don't harass me. You don't need to like me. That's okay. Survivors aren't here for you to be liked.
Oh my God.
Survivors aren't here for you to be liked. For you to like them. Okay? I don't exist for, you to like me. I don't. No one exists.
This felt very similar to the situation with Chrissy Carlson Romano, where Alexa then begins kind of have a tirade on Twitter, demanding a lot of things from a lot of people. After this, and over the next couple months, things kind of somewhat settled down as Alexa took a break from streaming, where she comes back swinging, specifically toward Cat 10 Barge. On September 9th, 2024, Adam makes a video summarizing the situation called The Truth About Alexa Nikolas, which I will also summarize again. Starts with Alexa tweeting, "Where's her article? Malicious defamation. Nowhere to be found. Claiming defamation from an article that had not even been released." Alexa then tweets an image of Cat 10 Barge saying, "One of the reasons I took a break." To which Adam McIntyre quote tweets this by just saying ratio with pictures of Cat 10 Barge. Alexa then tweets a still from a video where Adam was reacting to a video about Drake Bell, saying this doesn't look good, where Adam's kind of going like that, but like not that intense. The article never came back, or never came out about Alexa. Adam and Kat state that it's because NBC did not deem Alexa a prominent enough of a figure to run the article. Adam said that it was considered too niche. And then there's a comment around there somewhere about being irrelevant. Things get really wild when Adam mentioned that he got a cease and desist, and this is something that I feel like not enough people have brought up for whatever reason. Adam McIntyre got a cease and desist on behalf of Alexa Nikolas and Eat Predators from Andrew Bretler.
It's a offhanded screenshot from a video. Ironically, it's from a video in which I talked about Alexa anyway. So I just think it's so ironic that she's now making fun of me. She's now making fun of me when Alexa has also spoken about the Colleen Ballinger situation. Now, I don't mean to jump ahead here, but I have received a document on Alexa's behalf from the one and only Andrew Brettler. Now, while I'll not put it on the screen, I can load it up right in front of me. Andrew Brettler, that Colleen Ballinger hired, by the way. And just a little part of it is our firm is litigation counsel to Alexa Nikolas and Eat Predators Incorporated. Who does Andrew Brettler, who is his client, you may ask? Colleen Ballinger. You know, she hired Andrew Brettler last year whenever I spoke up about Colleen. So we're starting off really strong, and it is really fucking irritating, and I cannot bite my tongue any longer that Alexa Nikolas is running on this thing against me now as well, and people don't even know about this Andrew Brettler thing. And now I have been sent this document of this, I guess, cease and desist. You know, I have it right here in front of me. I will say that it's alleged, and I have been sent it. So this is not something that has been sent to me. It was something that was sent externally, and I have received it. So I'm only going off of what I have in front of me. So I will say that this is all alleged, but it is, you know, let me load this up right again. I mean, legal correspondence. Brettler. Signed Andrew B. Brettler. And Alexa Nikolas's name is there. So I can only go off of what I have been sent, right? And also, what would be so ironic in all this is if I get a cease and desist from Andrew Brettler. Really full circle moment to the Colleen Ballinger situation when she hired him. But I'm just like, why is Alexa Nikolas, you know, speaking up for victims and is hiring someone who their clientele, Colleen Ballinger, Prince Andrew, Armie Hammer, Justin Roiland, Brian Singer, Chris Noth, Danny Masterson, Dave Portnoy, from what I've been sent here. So I find it really disturbing that Alexa thinks that she can threaten me on Twitter and make fun of me in the process, I guess, when I have been sent this document, which I will say is an alleged document, from Andrew Brettler on her behalf from, you know, last year, I guess. Let me pull up the date on this, just so I'm being fully transparent with you. You know, April of this year. So that's really disturbing to me that he is now involved in this when he was such a big part of my life last summer. Thank you, Colleen Ballinger. And for Alexa Nikolas, like, I can't. So obviously she did a bunch of other tweets as well. Like last night, I mean, I was seeing that Becky, shout out Becky, we love you, has been tweeting about this. So anyways, I thought that I may finally just say what I have, you know, been thinking about this Alexa Nikolas situation for a while. So let's get into it, shall we? If Alexa Nikolas is threatening that Thursday live stream and stuff like this, you'll be sorry, Adam. I'm like, oh, there's things I've wanted to say about you, Alexa. So Alexa Nikolas, as we know, was a part of Quiet on Set. Drake Bell was also a part of Quiet on Set. Now, before Quiet on Set came out, in October of 2023, Alexa Nikolas made a video saying that, calling Drake Bell out, and we are aware that Drake Bell has his own accusations and has actually pled guilty to child endangerment and a misdemeanor charge of, you know, having, you know, harmful matter to juveniles. So Drake Bell was a part of Quiet on Set, right? And I, in the moment, expressed that it was frustrating for me that people couldn't, you know, support Drake Bell in his accusations, which are 100% valid, by the way, and people should be supporting Drake Bell. They should be supporting Drake Bell and what he spoke about in Quiet on Set. I think it's important, and I want to clarify that over and over and over again. That yes, let's support Drake Bell. What in actuality happened was the victims of Drake Bell were then under this huge hate campaign in which there's news articles about it. There's news articles. Drake Bell promotes video from known conspiracy theorists, and it talks about, you know, videos that are these like exposes fake allegations against Drake Bell, and the victims of Drake Bell were getting so much hate after Quiet on Set, and it was really, really, really frustrating that people weren't able to uplift Drake Bell and support him, but also support his victims. And it is really upsetting that Alexa Nikolas, let me pull this up, was supporting them back in October 2023. Today, Alexa Nikolas exposes Drake Bell. If we click on this, the video has been taken down. The video's been taken down. It's important to acknowledge that Drake Bell can be a perpetrator as well as a victim, but if we're not going to acknowledge both of them, it's really upsetting. And I want to clarify over and over and over and over again. You can support Drake Bell and you can also support his victims. So anyways.
Now, if you don't know, Andrew Brettler has represented the likes of Colleen Ballinger. Alexa, in turn, by doing this, is silencing Adam because a cease and desist means stop talking about me. Someone, if we're talking about the context specifically of Adam McIntyre at worst was groomed by Colleen Ballinger. At most, charitably, was taken advantage by a huge creator who in turn assisted propelling a smear campaign against a minor. And to add to that, Alexa hires the same lawyer as Colleen Ballinger. This, again, is feeding into the vibe of the hypocrisy. He also has represented the very abusers that Alexa has called out, such as Bryan Singer and Danny Masterson. Alexa then makes a video responding mainly to Kat Tenbarge called The Truth About Kat Tenbarge. This is still the last upload on the channel as of recording this on November 10th, 2024. This video, I'll summarize as well, begins by saying that Kat changed since her coverage of Johnny Depp and the Amber Heard trial. Alexa claims that the article did not come out because Kat was intentionally lying in the article and both her and her sources would be held for libel, which is sort of slander to my understanding. I say this with kind of not a lot of knowledge on it because the Canadian court system's way different and it's way harder to sue for stuff like that. The article was about the shift in how Alexa began supporting Drake and other ex-members of Eat Predators were coming out against Alexa Nikolas. Alexa said that she felt that she had dehumanized Drake Bell by calling him a predator. Again, despite the fact that he pled guilty to things that I would kind of consider that a good assessment of. But anyway, claims that people wanting a response regarding Drake Bell was coercion, which I thought that was pretty gross, personally, especially when you're demanding things for Chrissy Carlson Romano all over Twitter, but for some reason, because again, I guess the context that makes this different is that I presume that Chrissy Carlson Romano has not been a victim of anything, I guess, but even then, it's like, how certain are we when she was in such a predatory field? But she has said she's had better experiences, so I guess that lends to that, obviously. But at the same time, nobody has, I just feel like there's something strange there, where it's like you deleting a video, Alexa deleting a video directly being critical of someone who has literally pled guilty, versus Alexa demanding comments from someone who, to my understanding, has not pled guilty on things, but one of them's coercion and one of them's not.
I'm not going to go into that yet. I want to start with what you emailed me in April. No, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for Adam either. What you emailed me in April was honestly bizarre behavior. I could not believe that it was you, that you would do that, that you would use your job to try and scare me because you were mad that I didn't read your article when it came to Drake Bell. So much so that when Adam was live, you were in the chat going off or whatever. Kat, I didn't read your article about the harassment of Drake Bell's reported survivors because you platformed someone by the name of Exposing Rich, who you were watching regularly harass me daily, by the hour, almost by the minute, senselessly. And I found your article hypocritical. Okay? If you're going to stand for survivors not being harassed, you don't choose which ones don't deserve harassment. You watched her, or whoever, harass me. And that hurt my feelings. So I didn't want to read that article, but I didn't know at what lengths you would go to get even about that. But I found out. I found out. So we're going to go through your email. We're going to go through it question by question. I'm going to answer them again in short form. You have all the evidence. You guys can go ahead and be mean girls and say the article didn't come out because I'm irrelevant. Nice. Not true. The article didn't come out because I showed you the evidence that you were wrong and that your sources were liars. It was a we transfer. It became a drive. It just became piles of evidence that proved that what you were writing was defamatory, that you would be held liable for that defamation, including your sources. That is the reality. And you know it. And I wish you were honest about that and stopped allowing harassment or bullying towards a survivor. I wish you were you during the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. I wish you were still like that. Where's that cat at? I want to see her again. The deep dive that you were doing, you might have dived too far to no return. I think that's honestly what happened. But the grossest part about it was the fact that you were empowering and enabling my stalker, who is dangerous. Again, I hate that I have to actually repeat this, but my child has a restraining order against him too. And I find it weird that he filed what he filed around the same time as your article. Why? What empowered him to further harass me? I sure hope I never find out it was you, because that's not what you stand for, right? That's not what your article was about. No. So I hope I never find out that you were behind it, because if I do, that's going to be a sad, sad day, not just for me, but for a lot of people. So let's go and read your email. So on April 16th, 2024, I got an email from Kat.
I just think there's a lot of decontextualization happening that makes Alexa try to push herself as a perfect victim, which is just not the case. Alexa claims that the still of Adam McIntyre, paired with the literal words, "This does not make you look good," was not about looks, which is really silly, I think. Continues to go through the interview questions, states that Kat, which were done for the article that, and again, never came out, states that Kat was having a conversation with her stalker, and they were talking about problems with eat predators. Now, here's the thing. I go into this a little bit in the last part. I'm swaying because I'm nervous. This is giving me anxiety. I have some personal histories that make this video a little bit difficult to do. I'm not saying any here or there or making any comparisons because I'm allowed to have my own personal things that stay to myself. But regardless, nor do I want to weaponize any of my experiences against anybody either. But I think, especially when the stream ends with Alexa telling Kat that she aligns with Depp heads.
I don't want to do this anymore. You guys don't understand, it put me at risk. And now I have people like Kat who encourage that type of behavior. How do I feel about it? How do I want to respond? Look at my face. Here's your last and final question, Kat. And I want it to be remembered that you're a victim blamer and that you don't believe survivors. How does Alexa respond to the claim that she obtained a restraining order against a former ePredators member on false or incomplete pretenses based on claims within the April 10 filing and information from 4 sources? You don't believe me? with all the evidence. DEATH, threats. My daughter. Stalking me physically. Endless YouTube videos, posts. I'm done.
And then just being like silencing survivors over and over again gives anti-hero energy. I really don't know how else to, this is where it starts getting really frustrating. And when we're talking about, when I said in the last part that I do get into a bit about the downfall of Eat Predators, the last part of this section rather, but I still don't want to, upon talking with Ophi about this too, I touch on it very lightly, and I'll get into that more. And I know I keep saying that, it's just because this is clearly a very complicated situation. Adam responds to the live stream in another video, and Alexa's husband commented and pinned it. I'm just going to put in the clip where Adam reads it in response to it so we can kind of get a two birds of one stone moment.
Her husband has commented on the live stream literally just 2 days ago, and she has pinned it. So they are still putting this out there. They are still like coming for Kat, coming for me. He posted this to Kat Tembarge. Over the years, I've encountered numerous journalists, and it deeply saddens me that someone who claims to support survivors and their narratives and who dedicates time to raising awareness about abuse could engage in such unethical and harmful in reporting. Okay, we're going to get to all this. It is disturbing to witness someone I love, someone who has tirelessly advocated for the survivor community, be subjected to daily harassment and slander. Well, what is she doing to Kat? Isn't she the one that's posting pictures of Kat and insinuating hate against Kat? And now we're doubling down on it even more, doing a live stream trying to expose Kat. Like, putting myself out of this, like, Alexa Nikolas has ran with this against Kat. And then to kind of turn it around on, well, actually, I'm the victim in all this. I'm like, do you hear yourself? Your uninformed stance and unwillingness to carefully examine the facts before you report to your sources have played a significant role in this, exposing your biases and lack of integrity. When you first sent your uninformed list of investigative questions, there wasn't an ounce of fear, only pain and frustration at the thought of having to organize, answer, and share everything Alexa and I have documented over the last couple of years. It is disheartening to think that once again, we were not being believed. Even you seem surprised by the full transparency that we provided regarding business operations and activities of the organization. Despite receiving over 100 pages, or hundreds of pages, I guess, of responses and evidence, you still sought ways to support your agenda, spinning conspiracies to fuel a witch hunt against a survivor activist who only claimed and aimed to help others and use her platform for good. You should be ashamed. Now, another big reason that I want to ultimately make this live stream is because when Alexa inevitably comes back, she is going to continue what she always does, right? And I want to be a voice for the people that Alexa doesn't protect. You know, Alexa has an entire series on her channel, I think it's called Guess Who, in which she literally just comes for people and exposes them and does what she's accusing Kat of to them. So when she inevitably comes back and redoes all that again, I want to know that I have done my best to try to protect people from what Alexa Nikolas does with her platform. You owe Alexa an immediate apology. You weaponized your position as a journalist to carry out a character assassination against an innocent person and even considered giving a platform to her dangerous stalker, someone who has threatened the lives, well-being, and safety of Alexa and our children. This is truly shameful. I'm not sure how you remain employed, but perhaps returning to ASMR YouTube videos would be more productive than manipulating narratives without regard for ethics or reason. It's clear your vendetta against Drake Bell was rooted in a desire to harm Alexa. When you discovered what was being publicly made available police documents, you should have reconsidered your perspective and reported on it. But because it didn't align with your previous narrative, you chose silence. Alexa searches for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable or disappointing. She embraces it and shares the knowledge with others, asking the right questions, like a journalist should. Okay, so now Alexa is a journalist. So the real question is, why didn't you? You're a paid professional, yet you failed to do your job. Finally, to those criticizing Alexa's association with Drake Bell simply because they appeared in a documentary together and she supported his survival and his stance against Nickelodeon, and also went to his concert only 2 months ago and went backstage, by the way, and kikiing with him, but she doesn't acknowledge that. Please remember that child stars and public figures are human beings with their own suffering, difficulties, and stories. I urge you to spend more time researching Drake's case instead of wasting energy spreading hate into the chamber. Okay, so now we have him defending Drake Bell. Great. Women in the media and online are often held to an unrealistic standard of perfection. Isn't that what you're doing to Kat? Subjected to relentless criticism and scrutiny, Alexa has never scammed anyone or promoted falsehoods about her activism. She's only tried to make a positive impact in the world, and it's sickening to see how quickly people are willing to tear her down for it. So, a big reason that I am responding to this live stream is because her and her husband are still spewing this shite. And I wasn't going to do this, and I was going to stand by my word if they weren't continuing to spew this goddamn shite.
A major part of this response is that Alexa never directly addresses the documents about the Drake Bell case that she ends up releasing, like how she got to them. And Alexa kept saying that it was like public record, but people literally followed the instructions that Alexa gave on how to obtain the records and could not find the same records. And there's literally a screen recording on it. Alexa literally posted a gotcha, which was text from Kat saying that the records were not easily accessible by the public and seemed to have been something that you need to get with a lawyer. Everything truly fell apart when Alexa put the documents on Twitter with the case of Drake Bell's victim. She platformed, and this is not up for argument, and I really don't care what anybody says. Alexa Nikolas platformed the re-traumatization of a child, or of a trauma that happened to someone as a child, because I'm not sure how old the victim is. I kept away from all the documents because that's not my shit to get into. Like, there's really no other way of saying that. I'm not going to go through and just try to understand. Like, I just don't think that that's my business. She brings this back up into the public eye with all of this being at the hands of someone, Drake Bell, that Alexa claims to not be defending. Then why are you releasing this stuff publicly then? To vindicate yourself? This isn't a situation to vindicate yourself for, because it's not your business either. That's the other thing. Just because you worked in the same network as somebody and you feel you relate to somebody because they're also a victim, which can be true, doesn't mean you have the right to re-victimize somebody else while claiming that you're the one being re-victimized because people are critical of you for doing these things. You see what I'm saying? Doesn't make sense. At least in my opinion. Also, there's claims that the documents are not redacted properly. Again, I'm not looking at them. I think that that's kind of where my moral compass says no more. It says we've tapped too far in. So let's get into the final one of the final frameworks here, or from the final book, I guess. So again, I mentioned here in my script as well that I wanted to pull from each of the books, but ended up not happening because two of them were a bit different than I wanted. So we're going to pull from the little book of Conflict Transformation by John Paul Rhetoric. And I want to read specifically about the levels in which changes are to be made between different groups and different persons who have faced harms. So it reads, what kind of changes do we seek? We can also think about changes in response to two questions. What changes are occurring as a result of conflict? For example, what are the patterns and the effects of this conflict? What kinds of changes do we seek? To answer the second question, we need to talk about our values and what the intentions might be. With these two questions in mind, let us consider these four areas. The personal aspect of conflict refers to the changes affected in and desired for the individual. This involves the full person, including the cognitive, emotional, and perceptual and spiritual dimensions. From a descriptive perspective, transformation reminds us that we as individuals are affected by conflict in both negative and positive ways. Conflict affects our physical well-being, self-esteem, emotional stability, capacity to perceive accurately, and spiritual integrity. Prescriptively, transformation represents deliberative intention to maximize the destructive effects of social conflict, to maximize the potential for growth in the person as an individual human being at physical, emotional, and spiritual levels. The relational dimension represents the changes in face-to-face relationships. Here we consider relational affectivity, power, and interdependence, and the expressive, communicative, and interactive aspects of conflict. Descriptively, transformation refers to how the patterns of communication and interaction are affected by conflict. It looks beyond the tension around the visible issues to the underlying changes produced by conflict. This includes patterns on how people perceive, what they desire, what they pursue, and how they structure their relationships interpersonally, as well as intergroup and intergroup. Conflict changes relationships. It raised to a more explicit level questions such as these. How close or distant do people wish to be in their relationships? How will they use, build, and share power? How do they perceive themselves, each other, and their expectations? What are their hopes and fears for their lives and relationships, their patterns of communications and interactions? Prescriptively, transformation represents the intervening intentionality to minimize poorly functioning communication and maximize mutual understanding. This includes trying to bring to the surface explicitly the relational fears, hopes, and goals for people involved. The structural dimension highlights the underlying causes of conflict and the patterns and changes it to bring in social, political, and economic structures. This aspect focuses on attention to how social structures, organizations, and institutions are built, sustained, and changed by conflict. It is about the ways people build and organize social, political, and economic relationships to meet basic human needs, provide access to resources, and make decisions that affect groups, communities, and whole societies. Transformation at the descriptive level involves analyzing social conditions that give rise to conflict and the way that conflict affects changes in existing social structures and patterns of making decisions. At the prescriptive level, transformation represents deliberatively intervening in order to gain insight into the underlying causes of social conditions to which create and foster violent expressions in conflict. In addition, it openly promotes non-violent means to reduce adversarial interactions and seeks to minimize and ultimately eliminate violence. This includes non-violent advocacy for change, pursuing such a change that promotes developing structures to meet basic human needs, substantive justice, while maximizing involvement of people in decisions that affect them. Procedural justice. So I think this is just something that I wanted to bring in as well, because so much of this discusses the fact that you need to be charitable and understand the systems surrounding someone's victimization in context of how you live your own life, and how pain is kind of just a thing that goes across all different groups of people in all different situations. And I think Alexa's lack of charitability, a lack of intention, and a lack of understanding criticisms of herself really devalues the work that needs to be done to properly sustain a healing environment rather than an adversarial environment, and those two things are not the same. To be at the adversary or to be against victimizing people, while a somewhat decent position to do, does not have any effect if that is where it ends. And I think that that is something that is really pertains to the difficulties that have come to the Eat Predators movement. Societal structures derive complex results, and putting everything into something this complex as black and white is an irresponsible way of trying to uphold a movement as important as this. Finally, when we look at the final component, which is the Eat Predators movement as a whole and how it lost its momentum, this is where we kind of get into closing this section. The Eat Predators movement started in 2022 as a movement against predatory behavior in the music industry, and slowly expanded to Hollywood, targeting child acting, and particularly Nickelodeon, which Alexa worked with in the early 2000s. The music industry focus came from the abuse that Alexa faced at the hands of her ex-husband, Mike Milosh. Eat Predators came from the term Eat the Rich, which came as a result of the first protest against Diplo, where he was playing a set for Eat the Rich pop. I'll list some, there's a lot of protests. I list some of them here. Diplo, Brian Friedman, Red Light Management, Sony Music, Nickelodeon, and the State Bar of California. The movement itself began falling apart as ex-members began to come out about their experiences. Members Kay Brown and Kaylee Higgins interviewed on a channel owned by someone named Shift Orion, or William, where it was discussed that Eat Predators may not have even been Alexa's idea in the first place, and Kay states that there were not enough adequate resources for survivors. This is something that I feel like, just in the conversations that Alexa has with the public, is something that implies that there is a possibility that at least the support from Alexa specifically could have been difficult, especially if people disagreed with the way to run the movement. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this, because based on what I've put together and asking some questions to people who kind of know what they're talking about in regards to Alexa, because again, I'm pretty new at this, and obviously reviewing Nora's document, I think the person, William or Shift Orion, is the person that Alexa mainly claims to be her stalker. Alexa wrote an open letter refuting claims to that the organization was not her idea, providing some evidence. And a lot of the fallout between Alexa, Kaylee, and Kay bottled down to finances, and just where the line between the intention around the movement and the finances became blurred. And Alexa claimed that Kaylee stole money. So that's kind of another part. So it's a lot of infighting, along with a combination of the public perception. Now, I initially thought I was going to go into this way more. Nor provided me a ton of stuff on this. With the mess that came through, this is not something that I want to unearth anymore. I'm just stating that, like, as well as the things that I'm talking about, there was public, or not public, there was there was somewhat public, but there was infighting in the Eat Predators movement, because I'm trying to show that they're not necessarily, Eat Predators is not Alexa Nikolas. Alexa Nikolas is not Eat Predators. But Alexa Nikolas, her YouTube channel is the symbol of the movement and ties herself to it a lot. But that her perception of the public led to a public perception degrade of this thing. But there was also problems having within the organizational section of the movement as well. Now, I'm trying to say this as directly as possible, and I'm going to look right at the camera right now. I have zero interest in talking to any parties involved in the Eat Predators movement whatsoever. And this in itself is a one-off video for me. This video is about how the movement fell apart in the public eye, not about any disdain I have for anyone. I have zero interest in being reached out by anybody. I have zero interest in interviewing anybody, whether that be Orion or whatever, Kaylee, Kay, Alexa. I don't care. In the sense of, I am not about to go in the weeds. I'm not about to platform anybody, because there's so much wildness happening here. Do not reach out to me. I'm serious. Because these are not things I'm willing to play around in. I'm not that involved in the internet as a whole, and I'm not getting into these weeds. And I'm saying this because of things I've heard about in regards to people who talk about these things. The conflict started mainly in January 2023 and has escalated to the point that there is change.org petitions to deplatform Alexa Nikolas, hours of streams of Alexa Nikolas trying to defend herself, court proceedings, and restraining orders. So I'm keeping anything as much as I can away and just adding a final nuance from one of them. So I'm going to read from the Conflict Transformation book again. This is the last section I have tabbed here, which discusses the process structures as platforms for change. Our key challenge is this: how to develop and sustain a platform or strategic plan that has the capacity to adapt and generate ongoing desired change, while at the same responding creatively to immediate needs. We can do this by thinking about platforms as process structures. So this is just talking about how are we going to make an actually effective way to address trauma and build up communities. In the new sciences, process structures are described as natural phenomena that are dynamic, adaptive, and changing, while at the same time maintaining a functional and recognizable form and structure. Margaret Wheatley refers to them as things that maintain form over time yet have no rigidity of structure. There are also, paradoxically, phenomena which that are both circular and linear. By making these two terms as processes and structure into a single hyphenated word, we emphasize the reality that a single concept we combine the two interdependent characteristics, adaptability and purpose. Conflict transformation envisions conflict and our response to conflict as the creation of processes having these two characteristics. Change itself has the feel of a process structure, and we are reminded to explore more closely on how we might understand the differences and contributions of circles and lines. Both circular and linear. Circular means things go around. Sometimes the word circular has a negative implication, as in circular thinking. Circular has positive implications. First, it reminds us that things are connected and in relationship. Second, it suggests that the growth of something often nourishes itself from its own processes and dynamic. Third, and most critically to our inquiry, the concept of circularity reminds us that processes of change are not one-directional. This is particularly important to keep in mind as we experience the ebb and flow of our efforts to create platforms for constructive response. Circularity suggests that we need to think carefully about how social change actually happens. Often we look at change through a rearview mirror, observing the pattern on how something got from one place to another. But when we're in the middle of change, and when we're looking forward towards what can be done, the process of change never seems clear or neat. The circle reminds us that change is not evenly paced, nor is it one-directional. As we begin placing our circle in chronological time, to do this, I have found it useful to pay attention to what change actually feels like, especially when persons involved care deeply about certain kinds of social change in the middle of difficult conflict. Figure 2 identifies 4 common experiences, each very different, each wrapped up in one another at each part of the cycle of change. Sometimes we feel as if desired change is happening, as if there is progress. Things are moving forward in a desired direction towards the goals and aspirations we hold ourselves and our relationships. So it's just a circle where one part says things move forward, one part says things hit a wall, movement stops, third section says things move backward, and part 4 says things collapse. and it just shows it cyclically like this. And this is where so much falls apart with Alexa, where it's if things are not working perfectly and things are not running in the way that she wants, that it is the re-victimization of something. Change is not linear. Change is going to be complicated. Change is going to be difficult to do. And that's something that is really important when we're thinking about these sorts of contexts. This gets us to our last part of the video, part 3, Alexa's rhetoric. This part is quite short. I'm just summing up everything that's kind of happened here. Any movement will only go as far as the perception of who leads it and where it is intended to go. There's an element of wanting to pair a persona often to a nature of a cause, especially something that is run through social media. When we get into the nature of what Eat Predator stands for, it's supposed to be a supportive place for survivors to feel empowered and believed. As well, instances where people are reflecting on their experience with sexual violence is something that is so personal. Each situation is different and impacts each person who faces it differently. One of the main criticisms that comment, tweet, my own perception, as well as what Ophi has relayed in her videos and other people as well, Alexa puts herself up as a representation of seemingly all survivors. This becomes the most evident at times where Alexa is being criticized, and I'm sure this has come through in even the clips that I've used, but Alexa will often say, X person is bullying / re-victimizing / defaming me. They want to silence survivors. And then she plays the believe all survivors soundbite or something along that line. This is Alexa appealing to a self-imposed authority and leveraging something that is very emotionally complex and jarring to a lot of people. Now, I'm sure there is legitimacy to the fact that some, if not a lot, of the criticisms come from those protecting Alexa as well as other people's abusers, especially in a place like Hollywood. However, making the overarching argument that makes it feel like, or the overarching argument of this like re-victimization kind of makes it feel like Alexa Nikolas is weaponizing her own traumas, also in turn using the trauma of the collective against those who she has conflict with. At times, a conflict even being against those who have dealt with similar things. This was not even coming to the fact that many criticisms come from those viewing, interacting, and even at times monetarily supporting her content. And many of those watching Alexa and doing these things being survivors themselves. Then there's the Drake Bell lawyer and like the lawyer hypocrisy. Adding detail in regarding to the lawyer as well, Alexa criticizes Jonah Hill for hiring a questionable lawyer despite herself allegedly hiring the very lawyer who represented Bryan Singer and Colleen Ballinger named Andrew Brettler. The very lawyer as well that shows some of the only direct examples in this whole ordeal that we are seeing as Eat Predators unfolds of someone being silenced, in this case, or attempted silencing, in this case, Adam McIntyre. In regard to Drake Bell, Alexa never addresses going to the concert, nor her deleting of the videos beyond this concept that she doesn't owe anyone anything. And now I'm not sure what Chrissy Carlson Romano has dealt with, as I've mentioned, but Alexa sure came for her platforming an abuser, while Drake was not necessarily fully platformed, getting rid of the criticism that she had and she was so passionate about, being seen with him and re-traumatizing the person who's been abused via platforming court proceedings does not make Alexa look any better. If anything, even makes her look worse to some. Regardless of the semantics around Drake and if the court documents can be accessed publicly, they are not being shoved into the faces of tens of thousands of people over social media. And I know that I've tried this before. There are many times where if you're outside of the United States, you cannot access US court documents. So this is still extending these things to an international community. I don't know if that's the case for these because I refuse to go look for them. And if you think that that is a stunt on my ability to analyze the situation, then that is your own prerogative. Even if we're giving Alexa 100% of the benefit of the doubt that the documents are 100% publicly accessible, which I do not personally feel is the case, at best, she's taking these public things and releasing them out to everybody as like a reminder via her celebrity status and her large public platform. With this and the other events that I've described in the previous part, along with Alexa pedestalizing herself as the face of survivors and deflecting criticism, has resulted in quite the negative shift and a loss of faith in the Eat Predators movement and kind of the surrounding status as a whole. I have some faith that with coming back and addressing things and maybe taking a less conflict averse stance on the way that she treats people in a similar space, then things could improve. But I could just be overly optimistic. Like, let me know what you think. To conclude, Ovidoki gave us a really good introduction on who Alexa Nikolas is, as well as the Eat Predators movement. We went through concepts of restorative justice in context to 4 major controversies that Alexa Nikolas has gone through while trying to push forward the Eat Predators movement. And I went through just a kind of rhetoric piece on this sort of what people perceive as self-importance and how that can cause it. Thank you so much, Ophi. Thank you so much, Nor, as always. I love y'all. Link sources, all that stuff down below. Thank you again, my members and patrons as well. This was heavy, I understand. Thank you so much again to the end of the video. Stay safe. I support you here, I promise. I hope you have an amazing day. And for those of you who have dealt with these things, an amazing healing journey going forward. Bye.